All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Saturday, January 10th of 2026. Looking ahead here, we have a COD slate this afternoon. We have an early NBA showdown along with some other NBA action this evening, NHL, and most importantly, what most people are probably playing on this Saturday is the two-game NFL playoff slate. So should be a fun day of DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there's a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do the show Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then we do the show here on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So you can tune in any one of those days to get your questions answered. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed the college football game yesterday. It was a little bit of a blowout, but it was still fun to watch. Enjoyed it myself. For today, going to get SaberSim pulled up here. Do have a couple questions that came in prior to the show, and then we will start from there. So with that said, we're going to work top down here question-wise. First question, is my pool being simulated against the field lineups independently, or are they all simulating against them? Are they simulating against themselves also? Very good question. So the way it used to work does not work like this anymore. But I'm going to walk you through the timeline. The lineups used to go into the contest sim one by one. So if you had a pool of 500 lineups, what we would do is we would put lineup one in the contest sim against the rest of the field lineups. Say there's 20,000 field lineups. We would simulate a 20,001 entry contest. We would sim it. We would return the ROI for that contest. Well, we changed that primarily to account for lineups stealing equity from each other and basically fighting against each other, right? What we do now, what has changed? In the contest tab, you can actually see this, is this user entries column. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, this is a 150 max, but this user is playing 20 lineups in this contest, or they're maxing it out, right? Hey, this user has 150 entries in this contest. So now what we do, we take the same number of entries you have randomly from your pool. We put that in one contest sim. So if you're playing a 150 max and you have a pool of 500 lineups, we will randomly take 150 lineups from that pool, put it in the contest sim, say with 20,000 lineups. So now there's 20,150 lineups. And then we play it out, and then we return the ROIs. So every time we're running the contest sim, we're grabbing a random batch of 150. Obviously, lineups are getting reused over time. It's a 100,000 sim sample. And this accounts for how your lineups do against each other as well now. So we are not anymore simming your lineups independently, and we are simming them in batches based on how many entries you have in said contest. That is how it works. All right, next question. During the late swap process in NBA, I assume you need to update the projections before hitting the late swap button, but do you then have to hit the rebuild lineups button also? Okay, good question. So the way I would do late swap, all right, and we'll go over to the NBA slate for today. Just kind of, this is less about strategy and probably more just about like good order of operations, how to most effectively kind of walk through the process. So this slate is actually good for this, right? There's one game at lock. There's one game 30 minutes later. There's two games 30 minutes after that. And then there is one final game an hour and a half later. So what you want to do at each lock time is always click refresh projections. What refreshing projections does, it doesn't only give you updated projections. It effectively lets SaberSim update what time it is in the app. So when the lock happens and then you click refresh. Well, the last time you clicked refresh, it was pre-slate, right? The slate starts at 4 p.m. Pacific. So maybe you refreshed projections at 3:50, which would be 10 minutes prior to the slate. Okay, at 4:02, the slate has started, but you have not refreshed projections. SaberSim still thinks it's 3:50. So when you click refresh, even though maybe no sim ran, you're allowing SaberSim to update the time. Then it goes, oh, hey, these games have locked. Let's make the late swap icon appear. So late swap will appear. Now, let's say you do a swap, right? You successfully do a swap. Okay, we swap for the Clippers-Detroit game at 4:30. Now it's 4:35. Well, what I need to do is I need to refresh the projections so SaberSim knows, hey, we can't move these players in and out of lineups anymore. They are stuck. Let's lock them in place. The players are going to get grayed out in the table, and then we can do our next swap for the 5 o'clock window here. So what you can do in late swap is you can use the same late swap build the entire night. You can use one late swap build. You just need to refresh the projections after every game starts, and then you can just rebuild from this same build. You don't have to open up a new late swap. So it's open the late swap, run it. At the next lock window, refresh the projections to lock the players in, and then you can just click rebuild. And then you can use that build the entire night. You don't need to open up new ones. All right. Good stuff, good stuff. Next question. Hey, Andrew, anything new with COD this year? Still better to run Optimizer over Sim. I reserved my entries, but haven't actually looked at the build yet. Good question. Yeah, so our COD projections just went up. I got confirmation of that right before the show started. So if you go over to COD here, we go to build lineups. Projections are in the app, so you can use this. There is ownership. We are still not simming COD. Nothing has really changed in terms of our support of COD. I'm pretty sure eventually here we are going to end up simming this, having distributions, having contest sims, all of that. It is just not something we've been able to do yet. So yes, I would still use optimizer mode. And then what I would do is I would still use projected score for grading these lineups. So nothing has changed much in terms of COD support, and when it does, we will definitely let you guys know. All right, next question. Hi, does the 2-game NFL slate allow players versus defense? So we always allow players versus defense unless you tell us not to. So if we go over to the 2-gamer for today, if you go to the rules, there are no rules on by default. We have one rule created for you for kind of ease here, which says don't use players against opposing defense. So we've built the rule for you so you don't have to do it. All you need to do is turn it on. But by default, the rules are off, and it does allow players versus defense. I think that's definitely fine for a 2-game slate. All right. Next question. I tend to overthink on 2-game slates. How would you approach it from a salary and maybe pivot/leverage standpoint for NFL? Good question. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with capping max salary in terms of trying to be unique and trying to be different. I think it's okay to come in here and set a max salary, you know, $49,700, right? You leave $300 on the table automatically. I don't think you're killing yourself by doing that. If you want, and you know, maybe you want to raise the minimum, right? Maybe you want to raise it to 45,000. This is like what Showdown is, right? I think Showdown is 45,000 to 50,000. Hey, you want to raise the minimum? That's okay too, right? If I were building, I would probably leave it, to be honest, thinking about it right now. But it is okay to adjust these things, right? So it's one of those, You can do it. It is totally okay. You don't have to. But those are my thoughts here on salary. Now, as far say it again. This part kind of first you got to decide like, hey, do I have any takes here, right? Do I have any opinions about the slate that I kind of want to work in, right? Do I care, if maybe I want to get like a single digit ownership player, right? I kind of come in here, I look at these guys, and I'm like, hey, do I think any of them could help me win, right? So I know that's a question I answered in support earlier today. It's like, hey, how do I force a single-digit ownership player into my lineups or something like that, right? You can do those things. So it's just going to depend. What are your opinions about the slate? How do you want to work them in? I think it's okay to take stands. I think it's okay to use minimum exposures. You can even take stands against players, right? Hey, we have 89% owned Puka Nacua. Maybe I think that I want to be half the field or something, right? Like there are a lot of ways to get different on the slate. And it's not only forcing players in, but it could be avoiding players as well. So don't be afraid to work in your takes as far as minimax exposures go, as far as ownership goes, right? Ownership is going to be really important on a 2-game slate with trying to avoid duplication. All right, next question. Hey, Andrew, new to Saber. Is there any disadvantages to using my phone while building lineups as I'm never around my computer to build? Good question. So we do have mobile support. We have a mobile tutorial if you need one in this Saber. Actually, it's in Quick How-Tos. Quick How-Tos, how to upload lineups to DraftKings using mobile. I would check this out. I will drop it here in the YouTube chat. So the main points are, one, you need to access SaberSim via a web browser, such as like Safari or like Chrome. Those tend to work pretty well. And then there is one like kind of weird thing with Safari that you need to be careful with saving your lineups. So when you download them, don't click download, click view, and then click save to files. If you need help with that, you can Safari made like some update recently that kind of messed up downloads, but we do have workarounds, and our team is around 7 days a week. You can reach out to us, and we will get back to you and help you out, walk you through that mobile experience. But start with that tutorial. That is definitely going to be the best place to get things going. All right. So far, so good. So we already kind of built some lineups here. Right? We ran some lineups. So why don't we get a group going? And I'm going to get some lineups populated here. Where? Sorry. I watched somewhere say it's better to use direct fill rather than one contest per group. Can you explain this a little better? I wouldn't. So my opinion is that each template has its own purpose, basically, and one is not better than the other. They're all equal, but it's just like approaching a problem from different directions is the way I would describe it. So what one contest per group is going to do, say you're playing 220 maxes. One contest per group is going to give you 2 groups of 20 lineups, like this. Direct fill is going to give you 1 group of 40 lineups, like this. All contests in one group is going to give you 1 group of 20 lineups, and it's going to use the 20 lineups in both contests. So people play DFS differently. We have some basic templates here to kind of capture what most users are doing. You do have the ability to build your own, which is like what I did here. Somebody asked on a show, like, hey, how do I change all my groups from portfolio to uniques really quickly? And I showed them how to do that. The only time I think direct fill can be better than one contest per group is if you are using a lot of exposures. So the reason for that is that each exposure that you set gets sent to each group individually. So if you were playing, say, a 20 max and a 3 max, well, if you set 10 exposures, we're trying to send 10 exposures to 3 lineups, which can be really hard to actually meet those exposure requests. If you only have one group of 23 lineups, well, now we don't have that problem. So now I think that is the only reason direct fill can be better than one group per contest, is for that reason alone. Coach said, thank you. You're welcome. All right, next question. Hi, how do you get some of the lower owned players from all teams in lineups without going through all the players on each team, like Odunze, Noel, Warren, and so on? It's SS gravitates to the higher owned one-offs rather than the lower owned. Yeah, you can definitely force this if you want, right? So like what you could do is you could add a rule and you could say use at least one. Maybe you want to do a position player, and we're going to add a requirement where my own is less than 10%, right? We do a rule like this. We could save it as a manual rule and actually see what this rule looks like. Basically what it does is it creates a manual group for you, and it checks in all 76 players so you don't have to, right? So now a lot of low-owned players are in here. Bryce Young, Golden, Odunze, Chuba Hubbard. Trying to see some other names I'm aware of. Parkinson, DJ Moore, right? It's gotten all these players and say, hey, we have to use at least one of them in every lineup. So I think a rule is probably what you're looking for. If you have specific players in mind, like you named off a few, set some minimum exposures to them. Hey, I want to play, 10% of each of these players, right? Something like that I think would work as well. But I would probably start with the rule. I think that is a good place to start. All right. So far, so good here. So we've been slowly going through a slate demo here, right? Built some lineups, got a group created. We're using a direct fill kind of mock at the moment. Somebody asked earlier about like adding some takes, some leverages, right? Now is the time to do it. So, well, not particularly true. I guess you could have like set this rule, right? Hey, I want to take a stand and get leverage on low-owned players. Okay, I'm going to set a rule, and then I'm going to build my lineups, right? So let's just assume we built with this rule. Okay, great. We've already added in some takes. And now we're going to come into the post build. We're going to sort by exposures. Now we're going to see how those look, right? Hey, are we getting enough of the players we want, right? So we look at their exposures. I would look at the leverages too. Hey, what players are we taking stands on? And it looks like we're taking stands on the Packers. Looks like we like the Packers here by default, leverage-wise, right? Getting more of them than we were expecting users to have, right? We have 82% Jaden Reed. He's 25% owned, 73% Watson. He's 46% owned, et cetera here. So looks like we like the Packers here. And if you don't like them, right? What if you don't like them? What I would probably do, I would go to the team stacks. I would adjust the projected points. Say I drop them down 2 points. Okay, I click apply down here on the bottom. It's going to update the projections. I go to the players. I go to this gear icon in the My Projection column, and I click on Saber Sim Adjusted. Now what you're going to see is how the projections look if you do lower said team. So you can play around with the team totals as well as a form of trying to be different. So I had somebody ask like, hey, how would I do it if the Panthers end up blowing out the Rams, right? I'm like, hey, team totals are exactly what you're looking for. All right. Sharon said, thanks for the help. Mike said, if putting in my own less than 10 lowers your ROI a bit on your lineups, do you adjust the number up a bit or just trash the rule depending on the slate? So any deviation from a stock Saber Sim build will generally lower your ROI. I think it's okay to do that still, You know, if that is like something you want, like, hey, I know I want a low-owned player in my lineups, I'm basically saying that I would be willing to sacrifice the ROI to get what I want. And I think that's okay. I think it is okay to, if you go from a 100% ROI to 80% average ROI because you added this rule. Well, you're still positive, you're working in your take, and you're probably still playing good lineups. So overall, I think it's an okay thing to do, and I wouldn't be too concerned about it. All right. Basically wrapped up with this slate demo here. Answered quite a few questions. Rolling in live. I think we are all caught up. Mike said, appreciate your help. You're welcome. Good luck today. I think we're all set. Appreciate you guys tuning in on a Saturday. I will be back Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks.